Welcome to This Week in Local, a Locology podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Locology analysts Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Charles Laughlin, Senior Analyst at Locology, and today I'm joined by Matthew Marx, who's the CEO of Evocalize. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Charles, thanks for having me. Really excited to chat it up today.
Okay, so give us a few stats that explain your operational scale. Give us a sense of who you are, what you do, and how big you are, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So we started the business. We're about 7 years old, and to give you a flavor of how many businesses we help, we have about 1 million local businesses now, locations on the platform in various industries. We started out in real estate, so we have a pretty large group of real estate agents, teams, and brokers on using the platform, and we're crouching up on not every one of those uses it every single day. So I always think an interesting stat is like usage over time, and so we're encroaching on about 100,000 monthly unique visitors for businesses that are using the platform every month. So there are more than that fully automate themselves and aren't logging in every day, but I think that's a pretty good measure of what we're doing. And then final stat for you, we've over the past 3 or 4 years, we've run over probably $200 million in local media marketing spend now.
Okay, so we'll get back to a couple of those points a little later. Every one of these podcasts touches on AI, not just our podcast. I think a podcast about sports is probably talking about AI half the time now. So I'm going to ask one AI question, but the answer might be fairly involved. And the way I'm going to ask it is you've rolled out some AI features and tools, and you've made it a significant component of your platform. I think that's kind of table stakes now. I think you probably would agree. Maybe table stakes is a little strong, but that's probably about how anyone would put it.
Yep.
What I want to know is what among the sort of the things that AI is being used by your customers to do, what are they actually using and getting benefit from? And what are the things that are sort of great press release fodder, but aren't really being engaged with? Talk about that.
That's a great question. So and I agree with you, by the way, at a meta point, and there are some time-based advantages if you can move quickly here, but over time, every tool, every platform, and certainly ours, will evolve to be AI and generative AI in a lot of ways. First, we've been using different. I mean, AI is such a broad term. We've been using different types of AI in our platform for many years. But of course, large language models have changed the game in terms of what I would call computer-human interaction, right? Or how the natural language evolves with people interacting with software, and then software interacting with your data to make verbiage or narrative.
It's been in the background for quite some time, right?
It's now smack dab in the forefront, and I would argue, within a year, it's going to be really in your face, right? So the Copilot craze is on, right? So for us, again, we've been using machine learning in traditional machine learning techniques in like optimization across platforms and trying to get a bead on what a location's results will be for their marketing spend for a number of years. But the latest bit that we've really invested some time in, and again, I think this is just the movement that's coming. To your point, Charles, we've done some work. We sent a team down to OpenAI in San Francisco back in February, and of course now they're one game of many, right? But then they were the game in town, right? And so we sent a team down, and we do a lot of work helping local businesses to just with the press of a button, take the data for their products, their home listings, and all of the facets of a home listing, from geolocation to neighborhood information, all that other data, the promotions on products, and some templated pros around marketing those things. And we take all that, and we ship it off to large language models, and we get back with some data around it, and get back really nice specific marketing pros and marketing language that's specific to that thing you're advertising for your location right now. And that's been the biggest, the most heartily used thing in our whole suite in the AI world, which is how do you write better turnkey out of the box marketing, but not just generically for your location, for what you're trying to market right now. So instead of saying new home for sale, in Chelsea, I can say brick rambler down the street from, Central Park with a, right. And so you're able then, without having to know any of that, write some really pros. And then we're feeding the results back into the models. So we're able over time to improve. And we've improved about 30% on our starting point. So by the actual results for cost per lead or return on ad spend that are coming down at the end of the day. So it's getting there.
Okay. So this copy creation, is it becoming less repetitive because it can analyze what's being repetitive, for example? Kind of talk about from just a creative standpoint, how better it is.
Yeah.
If it is.
Well, it's, again, the performance tells us at the end of the day, because we spend time at all stages of the marketing funnel, but what do local businesses care about? They care most about people walking in the door, right?
Sure.
And buying their products. And so we spend more of our time as a company at the mid and low part of the sales funnel. So the performance says it's 30% better than the templated copy, right? Already. And it's getting better every month. So
did it go from 0 to 1 and then from 1 to 10? How fast did it get to 30%?
Yeah, well, what is it, August now? So we're 4 or 5 months into running it. And we gradually walked it out with some of our clients and partners. So we'd roll out a group of 10,000, 5,000 businesses or 10,000 businesses at a time. We probably have 100,000-ish businesses using it now. Not all of our partners are using it yet, but so it's getting better. I expect it'll hit an efficiency curve, an efficiency frontier, where we'll have to do some new things. The models are getting a lot better. We haven't really evolved our models yet. We've spent a lot of time on the data that we're feeding into the models and making an infrastructure that can be portable, because we don't want to battle on the model front. We think, Anthropic and OpenAI and Meta and they're in Google, they're going to do the battling at that level, and Amazon a little bit, and Microsoft, they're going to do the battling on the fundamental model standpoint. What we want to do is be great at using our local businesses' data to help them drive increased performance on whatever model works best that day.
So it's their data. It's not industry data, it's et cetera.
It's their data. That's right. It's their data. And you're going from, just to put a cap on it, Charles, you're going from templated language with like product name and location filled in as variables in the text to unique language for that product or service at your location with knowledge of the geography of your location. And it's really, really nice. We still put it in front of our local business before it goes out. We can fully automate it, but we're still walking into that because it has a hallucination problem sometimes. We're getting better at that, but we don't want it to invent something that would be misleading. So
can you quantify how this hallucination problem has tracked since it began? Was it like at every other post for a while? Now it's every 10th post. Talk about, if you can, how that improvement process has been.
I would say we're gaining confidence. Every month we've gotten, it's gotten somewhat better. I wouldn't say it was in every other.
It's a linear progression of improvement.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was in every other post problem at the beginning. That was a guess. It was 5 or 10% when that launched, right? And I think we're in this at least the single digits, if not below that, in terms of issues down. So we're gradually testing and evolving that to we want it to be fully automated, right? So a lot of our platforms.
Does hallucination have to be 0 for this to be fully automated?
I think you have to guard against the biggest problem, the biggest risks, right? So hallucination in terms of price is really bad, right? So that's a lot of what we're talking about internally with our engineering team and our data science team is how do you guard against the risky parts of the
like a hallucination that's going to cause somebody to lose their job.
That's right. Like there's risk out there. It's misleading advertising and trade practices if you're saying misleading things. So that's why we're being careful as we walk in.
Quick pause. When we say hallucination, we mean when the AI essentially makes something up.
Yep. AI makes something up. Yep. In fact, in the early days, we had some homes that it invented fireplaces for, it invented additional garage.
I'd buy that house. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It sounds nice and warm and cozy in Boston in the winter, but it turns out it doesn't actually have a fireplace.
Well, I probably felt it should have a fireplace,
So
This
you
house
have to
should have a
protect against
fireplace.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So the other side of that question was, are there any features you've launched that you had sort of the AI, bunting wrapped around that just hasn't been taken up because it's just either not there yet or just hasn't shown its value yet? Can you think of anything in that category?
Well, one thing we're trialing, and I think yet is the kind of key word there that you used, but I think there's going to be, so one of the sometimes gaps in, we're trying to use data to allow a local operator or local franchise group to run these highly sophisticated digital marketing programs in our world without advice, without human advice, right? And so one of the gaps that we've always thought of around the sides are, for some people just want a dialogue to confirm that they're making the right decisions, as simple as we make them, right? As simple and as data driven as we make them. You can give someone one choice and they still want to.
This is a conversational component then.
Totally. And so one of the things that we've been working on, and I would say it's not 100% there yet, but it's getting better, is the idea of a large language model that knows your location, knows your historical marketing performance, knows your data, knows your sales data. We're wiring in sales data and inventory data in most cases into our tech. And so it knows your local business and you're able to ask it questions. The challenge becomes constraining it. So how does it only give you options that you're able to execute, that you're able to do, right? And so that's the thing we're working really hard on now, how to constrain it into, great, these are the 5 options, right? Not everything in the world is your.
So is the problem that it maybe is just a little too, it hasn't been dialed in yet, or is the problem that it's been tried by your customers and they just didn't get it, couldn't figure out how to?
Well, we do a lot of user testing, so so we've been through quite a bit of one-on-one user testing around this concept, and I think that's the part that we're still trying to work out, I would say. So it's not gone out into even an alpha state for us yet. It's in a little bit earlier state than that, where we do direct user feedback one-on-one and user research, watch users using it, and that's been the one thing so far. It'll occasionally invent a new thing to go do that isn't possible, right? It's again part of the hallucination problem that a lot of folks are trying to solve, including us, in terms of the use of data. But it's, how do you constrain it? So you only have this number of options that you're able to execute at the end of the day. And once we get there, I think we have a real winner. And other folks will too, by the way. Like, that's a real winner where you can have a conversation 24/7 with a digital marketing analyst or expert who knows all of your data, knows all your historical performance, and knows all the things you can execute right now. That's pretty cool. So we're working pretty hard on that, but it's not there yet.
Okay, so an exit question on the AI thread here is, where will this all be in a year, in your opinion?
I think the example I just gave you, this Copilot, is going to be pervasive. Software is just going to be different. It's not going to be as much, to me, it's not going to be as much forms. And, software still is the same way it's been for the last 15 years.
Fill in a box and get a result.
Yeah, fill in the box. It's form-based. And you have search-based experiences that are a little different, but like, there's going to be a whole new one, which is conversation-based interfaces. And those are coming everywhere. They're coming for your point of sale back office. They're coming for your inventory system, for your CDP, for your marketing platform. They're coming everywhere. And if your platform doesn't get there in a year, everyone else and their competitors will all have it, and they'll be at a big disadvantage.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about may have a strong AI component. It wasn't sort of initially in my first thought, but I see the word push button ease used a lot in your, literature, in your verbiage on your website. I think I've heard you say that out loud. What does that actually mean? I mean, I can infer what it means. And then I think the thing I'm more interested in is, what KPIs do you look at that tell you you're achieving push button ease with your customer?
Yeah, that's a great one. So push button ease to us simply means anyone in that business at any time can, without any prior knowledge, can in 30 seconds or less. We measure it 60 seconds or less every single day. I'll talk about the funnel and some of the metrics we use to measure. But in 30 to 60 seconds or less, you can execute a world-class program without having to know anything else about the business, because we don't ask him any questions. It's already been pre-wired with best practices, and you literally press a button, put in your payment method if it's not in already, and you're off and going. So that is our goal in every single case we got, because we just think local operators in particular shouldn't be bothered with trying to become marketing experts. So that's our world.
Yeah, that's a sort of a psychological profile of every small business operator. It's like they're too busy. And it's not that they're, uneducated or unable to handle learning technology. They just can't be bothered, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything about that sort of standard sort of profile of the small business that you actually would challenge? I mean, is that really true? That if it's not push button ease, they're just going to walk away from it and be a non-user. Well, is there any sort of anything underneath that you would challenge?
Well, what I would say is automation is even easier than pushing a button, right? So actually, what we say push button easy, but I actually don't even love that, frankly, Charles, because I think at the end of the day, and this is why we built our company to begin with, like, the operator doesn't want to have to do anything, right? They want
push button is too much work. Is that what you're saying?
Push button is too much work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Push button is too much work. So that's how I would challenge it. I would challenge it maybe in a way you didn't expect, which is they shouldn't even have to push the button. Right.
Okay.
Right now, we measure. You asked about measures. We measure the usage funnel very, very tightly. Right. So we're instrumented from a user comes in. What do they push? How much time does it take them to get to step 2 of being presented with a couple of the options that they have? In some cases, every program marketing program is different for every business for us. But then how long does it take them, and what percentage of people get through that conversion funnel each time, right? And so our product team is on those metrics every single day. In fact, I have a real-time dashboard on my other screen that I watch all day long that looks at that metric, because that's the lifeblood that tells you whether you're easy enough. So that's the push button part. But I think striving for full automation, 100% automation, is really the answer for these industries.
I don't know how much, sort of survey research or whatever you do with small businesses to measure these things, but is automation have a negative connotation with any small business? Because that seems like, okay, it's easy, but it's also out of my hands.
Yep. I think there's a fear component that sometimes creeps in with full automation, right? So, in fact, we probably would have launched a full automation program without the push button easy, if that weren't the case. Because what we see a lot in our behavioral research, Charles, is that folks will come in and they'll run 1 or 2 or a series of push button easy programs. They'll look at the results, they'll gain confidence, and then they'll set up an automation. Right. And so they'll set up an automation that, say, looks at their sales data and adjusts marketing spend within tolerances based on their real-time sales data, or inventory data, issuing promotional marketing based on inventory levels. They'll run some manual programs first to see how it works and get comfortable with that. And then they'll set up a set it and forget it program. And I just think that's human psychology. Like, I would do that too, I think.
Right.
I'd go set up an automation from day one.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. Kind of talk about the social landscape. Social is a component of the service you provide, obviously. If you're doing local digital marketing, it better be, right? And the landscape has shifted quite a bit. Last time I think we talked about Facebook, I think, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And now it's Meta. It's still Facebook, really. But the landscape has changed. TikTok has blown up. Twitter has blown up. If you want to think of two different understandings of the meaning of the phrase blown up.
You mean X?
Yes, I was going to ask. Okay, I'll just ask this part. Did X nail the branding?
Man, it's hard to argue with Elon Musk, and the success there, but I think I'm with the crowd on that one. Like, reinventing an iconic brand like that is, you value something like the apple and Apple, right? And that's the business school traditional case study of like, what's the value, the goodwill in a brand. Twitter had goodwill in a brand, right? And so I wouldn't have had the nerve to do it. I have to tell you, I'll tell you that if it was my own, $60 billion on the line.
Yeah. Well, 54, I think it was, if I remember correctly, but it's a lot of billions.
Yeah.
Not all of his billions, but enough of them. And I would think anyway. So, I mean, with the emergence of TikTok and X, we can make fun of X all day long, right? How do you sort of think differently about how small businesses need to do social now, given, we've got, is it Threads? I haven't even used it yet, I have to admit. And then, obviously X, the everything app or whatever that's going to become, the emergence of TikTok, it's changed a lot. What do you advise? How are you framing this differently with small business? Are you thinking differently about how they need to do social media marketing and so on? Just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so we classify the world in two halves in this way, right? So there's one half that's kind of what we would call organic social, and that's the posting on your page and to the group of people who follow you, and that's interesting, and that's kind of that evolves into influencer marketing, and there's some interesting paths that can take, and so I think that's important from an activity standpoint. And when you get into influencer marketing, it can really impact the bottom line. But other than that, a Facebook page reaches, in some cases, less than 1% a post reaches less than 1% of the people who follow your page, right? So as a location, how many followers do I need to have to reach anyone who's going to come in and take any business action, right? And
does that number mean anything?
You're going to you have 2,000 people and you reach 20, right? It's like, how many of them are going to come in your restaurant tonight and eat or dine, right?
You don't know if they're hungry.
They're probably not, So while I think it's a good thing to keep your community active and posting, we focus on the other half, which is performance marketing, which is paid. And that's the lion's share because the platforms want to make money, right? So it's like, not that they're necessarily bad folks. It's just like they have requirement to make money.
No, but they did optimize this for paid, right?
Yes, they optimized it for paid, right? And so they sucked people on with the organic dream and optimized it for paid. Sure. So, but as local businesses, we have to just realize that happened, right? And
that's the world we live in, right?
The world we live in. So to me, we spend our world thinking about paid, and paid is really, when you're paying, you better get returns, right? So that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about. In terms of channels, we think about being omnipresent in your local area or market. That's hard to do on your own, right? And that's why there's technology that exists. We're one of them that helps you run sophisticated performance marketing programs across the TikToks and Instagrams and Facebooks and Google search and Google Discovery and YouTube and all these different locations.
So you work with a certain set of verticals. Fair to say, right? Restaurants being a big one, real estate you've mentioned as well. I know there's a few others.
That's right.
Some of them are tangential to these, right? Given your set of verticals, which platforms perform the best on the just talk about the paid side?
Well, so it gets tricky, right? So so you get quality versus quantity questions that come up, right? So still today, nothing beats for quantity, for cost-effective quantity of, say, leads, nothing beats a meta platform, Instagram and Facebook. It's just from like if you're a lead-generating business, you're recruiting or you're
they've been building that for the longest, right?
They have been building. They have just an amazing amount of data, but that's versus Google, right? So Google, I would argue Google, YouTube, and Discovery now are getting to parity, in some cases beating Meta in terms of cost per lead. Google search is the king, especially when you're looking at using long tail keywords, mid and long tail keywords for a location, say to target the neighborhoods around your location automatically. You get higher quality in those cases often. So there's often this quality versus quantity. And really when we build these programs, turnkey programs, we build a mix because you don't want to be all one or all the other. You want to be a mix of volume, quantity, and really high quality because they're just the different types of people come into them at different times. So that's how. But one of the interesting tidbits I'll tell you is Google Discovery ads, which are again Gmail, some of the Google search, visual-oriented Google search units, and YouTube, some YouTube experiences and others. That is working really, really well for our local businesses across industries right now. So for anyone out there listening, that's a great tip. You can go do it on your own. Even go into Google. Run some discovery ads around your locations, really, really performing well for us.
Okay, we could dig into that for a while, but I want to move on to a couple more quick things before we wrap up. Last year, you raised some money. Early last year, I believe you announced like a $12 million raise.
That's right.
It's no big secret that since then it's gotten tough, not just for any business that's raising money. So I don't know if you need to raise money anytime soon. I mean, that's not really the question. The question really is, if you were in that position, how would you have to change your business now, given the environment for raising money, if at all, to in order to put yourself in a position to raise now? Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah, so you're right. The B2B SaaS software market changed kind of in the blink of the eye. Right after we finalized our last round.
Yeah, your timing wasn't bad. Yeah,
it wasn't bad, and there are a lot of reasons that ended up even better than that because anyway the metrics were pretty good, but fortunately we're not in a position as a company that we need to raise right now. We still have folks, and I would say to any entrepreneurs out there, there are a lot of venture capitalists that are still looking at putting money to work. I mean, we're still getting calls every week, and so there's still a lot out there, especially for industries that are really interesting.
Calls from people who want to invest in you.
Want to invest.
Has the nature of those types of calls changed over are they bigger, smaller, from different sectors, et cetera?
I would say they're very focused now. Folks who have very specific theses on the particular area that you're working in, and so it's not as broad-based rush as it was for just deploying capital and powder. It's more focused on, let me pick the top 5 or 10 folks within a general market thesis and go after building relationships with them. And so I think that I don't think that's altogether unhealthy. Frankly, I think it's hard for some entrepreneurs. It's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs. So I don't want to minimize that, but that's good because frankly, we're wasting a lot of time before, I think, talking with lots of folks who weren't specifically focused in your area. So that's one. And definitely the profile has changed. Everyone, including us, everyone is focused on it's not a growth at all cost. It used to be a growth at all cost in industry. We've never really operated fully that way, even though we've been.
It never made sense to me. I mean, I know it made sense to VCs, but
yeah, I mean, so I think there's everyone's heard this by now that's in this space, but there's a focus on profitability and sustainability, and we've been no different. We focused on sustainability, profitability, and we feel like that allows you to raise when you need to raise. You raise on your own terms, and you raise with the right partners, with the right timing in order to really grow. And you don't get yourself stuck in these sky high valuations that really pigeonhole you for exits down the road, right? No matter what you choose to do.
It seems like people are more interested in talking about their ARR than how much money they've just raised, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's healthy, right? I mean,
yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, the race to the biggest round to me was kind of a negative thing. Incentivized.
One of the things one thing I like to say is that the amount of money somebody just raised is the least interesting thing about that company.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep, agree.
Okay. One last quick question. What's the toughest thing about running a business like yours right now? We just talked about raising money, so you don't have to put that on the list, but just given the environment and whether that's labor or any other issue, just give me a few.
Yeah, I would say the rapid change in venture, like what we just talked about, is probably the hardest thing. Now we've adjusted by now, but if you rewind 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, the rapid change somewhere around, end of summer, beginning of fall last year in the venture capital advice and expectations from a grow. Why aren't you dumping more money? Why aren't you burning more money? You can always go raise more money to the whoa. Don't burn, get profitable. That's a whipsaw for a business, right? And
have you had to do any cuts?
We did a small cut. Yeah, we did unfortunately a modest cut. we're the other thing for us, Charles, is we started in a large percentage. We started in residential real estate, and a large portion of the residential real estate industry runs on us, on our technology in one way or the other. We're white labeled in most cases, so folks don't know it's us. But in you might have heard about the residential real estate space having a little bit of a challenge.
It's had some bumps, yeah.
Yeah. So fortunately, we've been insulated a little from that. From a local marketing spend has taken a lot less of a hit than in local marketing than the corporate marketing areas have. But that's accelerated our distribution outside of that industry to, again, you've heard me talk about mortgage or restaurants. We've gone into mortgage because we see that as rates start to fall next year or the year after, we see that starting to take off again. We've got health and fitness. We've got general franchise. So there are lots of these other areas that we've accelerated into because real estate has just been going through a cyclical, difficult time after a lot of up years.
Okay. All right. We could talk about a lot more, but we're going to have to end it there, I'm afraid. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. I'm your host, Charles Laughlin. My co-host is Mike Boland. Thanks to today's guest, Evocalize CEO Matt Marx. You can find this show on all major podcast networks, and you can learn more at locology.com. Please subscribe, like, and review this podcast. Your engagement really helps others find us. Our producer is Dara Sweat. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Locology's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.